What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Justin Ballou here, running solo today with my official mock draft for the upcoming 2020 NFL Draft. Reagan Williams and me unfortunately cannot be together due to the coronavirus and other circumstances, so I'm going to run solo today and give y'all my official mock draft. Now, the draft is all we really have to talk about right now in sports because it's the only thing that's going to be happening. They have officially said that the NFL draft is going to proceed as normal, although we don't know exactly what form that's going to be in. But let's get right into the mock draft regardless. The number one pick in the overall draft is the Cincinnati Bengals. And there has been some talk recently that the Dolphins might be looking to trade up and maybe pick Joe Burrow. But I think if you're the Bengals, you have to stay at this number one pick. You have to pick your franchise quarterback. And I think they do, and they pick Joe Burrow here. If you're the Bengals, no matter what the Dolphins or any other team offer you, you have to stick with this pick because say you trade him to the Dolphins and he comes out and is this amazing quarterback and you missed out on your franchise quarterback because you wanted to acquire other assets, that will never be forgiven in Cincinnati. I think that they get this right and they pick Joe Burrow. Burrow, obviously, last season had one of the most unprecedented and amazing seasons that a college quarterback has ever had. And his draft stock absolutely flew way up the charts. Coming into this year, we all thought it was going to be Tua who was going to be the number one quarterback, but Joe Burrow just had an absolutely amazing season. And giving him weapons like A.J. Green and Joe Mixon, suddenly that Bengals offense looks kind of scary as they have some weapons around Joe Burrow to build around. They have a decent offensive line, not horrible. And then their defense, they need to rebuild later in the draft. But at number one, I think they have to pick Joe Burrow, and I think they will. Now let's move on to pick two. It's the Washington Redskins, and I think that this is a good pick for them, picking Chase Young here, best overall player in the draft on many experts' board. He was an absolute beast last season for Ohio State, broke all these records in FBS for sacks, tackles for loss, among other things. He's the best all-around player in the draft, and if the Bengals didn't have to have a quarterback, they would 100% be picking Chase Young because this guy is an absolute beast. And putting him in Washington, I think, is a good fit for him because he joins Daron Payne and Montez Sweat on that defensive line for the Redskins, and suddenly they have a pretty good defensive line looking. So if they can just pick Chase Young here, not trade the pick away, pick the best player in the draft, they'll have a really good defensive line this upcoming season. Now, pick three is where the draft gets interesting in my book because this is the spot that if a team like maybe the Chargers or the Jaguars or the Panthers want to trade up for a quarterback, they would either go to pick three or to pick four. But this mock draft is not including trades, so I'm going to go ahead and give Jeff Okudah, the corner from Ohio State, to the Lions at 3. The pick makes a lot of sense, obviously, with the Lions losing Darius Slay and a lot of defensive assets and free agency. Jeff Okudah is one of the best corners that has ever come out in college. I think I saw he didn't allow a touchdown in man-to-man coverage this season, which is absolutely incredible given the Big Ten and all the good receivers at Michigan and Penn State and even Michigan State. So that's really incredible for Jeff Okudah. I think he would instantly step into the number one corner spot in Detroit. I think it's a great fit for him if the Lions don't trade the pick away. I don't think they will because the one thing that I'm wondering about is who would want to trade up for Tua, because the Jaguars have said they're committed to Gardner Minshew. They're one of the teams that's in tank for Trevor Lawrence next season mode and hopefully get him in the 2021 NFL draft. And then the other team that could is maybe the Panthers, but they signed Teddy Bridgewater and they're another team that's kind of in tank mode and rebuild mode. So I don't really see either of those teams trading up. Now maybe if the Chargers were in love with Tua Tagovailoa and wanted to trade up, maybe they would, but it seems like they're really in love with Justin Herbert to be their franchise quarterback. So I really don't see a team to trade up to 3. But again, this mock draft isn't including trades. So I'm going to go ahead and pin Jeff Okudah, the corner from Ohio State, to the Detroit Lions at pick 3. And again, I think it's a great fit for him. Now let's move on to pick 4. This is going to be a really interesting selection in my book because the Giants have already come out and there's reports saying that Dave Gettleman has one more season to turn everything around. And I think if that's the case, he has to go with Isaiah Simmons, the linebacker / safety / corner / defensive line / everything on the defensive side of the ball from Clemson. He plays every single position at a high level, and he would instantly give the Giants an upgrade at wherever you put him. The only thing I wonder about is they really need offensive line help, And I think picking at 4 would be a stretch for any of these offensive tackles. However, with Dave Gettleman and his track history, I don't know that that's out of the question. But I think if he does have one season left and to turn it around, I think he has to go with Isaiah Simmons, and I think he will. It'll be interesting if they pick a tackle to see if Isaiah Simmons turns into a great player elsewhere, and then Dave Gettleman's like he's out the door because he missed out on this great player. But I think he has to really look in the mirror and say who's going to impact my team the most this upcoming season, and I think that guy is Isaiah Simmons for him. So let's just move on to pick 5 here, the Miami Dolphins. I have them picking QB Tua Tagovailoa out of Alabama. Though this season he went through a lot of injuries, he has had a bad injury history. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding him regarding if he can stay healthy or not. But I think that they have to pick Tua here. And even if he does get hurt, they have Ryan Fitzpatrick, and they're still more or less in rebuild mode. Having 3 first-round picks this year really helps with that. But I think they're going to pick Tua here, and waiting till 5 is risky for the Dolphins because I think that we might see them trade up to pick 3 or pick 4 just to avoid someone else like I mentioned earlier, the Panthers or Jaguars trading up to get Tua. So if he is their franchise quarterback, I would fully expect them or not be surprised if they trade up to get him. Like if you have a franchise quarterback that you want, you can't wait till pick 5. You have to go out and get him. And they might do that, or they might just sit back and wait till 5. The latter is kind of risky though, because you never know, like I said, Dave Gettleman, you never know what he's going to do. The Lions may take a quarterback. I mean, that Matt Stafford's definitely not getting any younger, but in this mock draft, I'm going to give Tua to the Dolphins. I think that instantly gives them an explosive offense now, as they do have Devontae Parker, and that offense wasn't terrible last season, honestly. Like they opened a lot of eyes on the offensive side of the ball. Mike Gesicki had a great season at tight end for them. They rebuilt their defense completely in free agency, and that defense actually looks quite good. So they just have to focus on offense in the first round, and I think they do, and that starts with picking Tua at pick 5. Now moving on to pick 6, the Los Angeles Chargers. Like I mentioned earlier, it seems like them coming out of the combine are just in love with Justin Herbert. The question really becomes which they want between Jordan Love and Justin Herbert. I think Herbert checks a lot of boxes, but there's questions with him whether or not he's going to make the proper throws, because at Oregon a lot in his career he didn't. But he had a great combine, a great Senior Bowl, and his stock blew way up. And I think that ultimately will put him over Jordan Love. And Jordan Love is kind of risky because he throws a lot of picks and other things. And I know that he had a lot of new starters on his offensive side of the ball this season at Utah State, but I think Justin Herbert's definitely the sexier pick and the pick that they have to make, and I think they will. They need to get Philip Rivers' replacement, and even if Herbert does get injured or doesn't have a great season, they do have Tyrod Taylor kind of as their mentor there and their veteran in the locker room to step in or just to mentor Justin Herbert with the Chargers. Pick 7 is going to get interesting for the Panthers because they need really everything besides running back, as obviously they have Christian McCaffrey. I have them going defensive tackle Derek Brown. He's by far the best defensive tackle in this draft, and the Panthers need help on the defensive side of the ball, no question about it. Like I said earlier, they're one of the teams that's rebuilding, so I think here you just kind of go best player available, and I think that is Derek Brown for them. He's so stout in the middle. He's so tough. He's so strong. And he gets leverage on like every play, and he's incredible. And that'll instantly give them a boost at defensive tackle. And I think they go Derek Brown there. Let's go on to pick 8. So the Arizona Cardinals, leading up to the draft, were all pinned to either Judy or CeeDee Lamb, the receivers from Bama and Oklahoma. But now, since they went and got DeAndre Hopkins, they no longer have a need for a receiver. The only thing that they're missing on their offensive side of the ball is a really stout O-line, so I think that that's what they address. Now, who they pick, no one really knows because the tackles are kind of up in the air regarding who's the best. Like a lot of people have Becton ranked number 1. A lot of people have Tristan Wirfs ranked number 1. Some people even have Andrew Thomas ranked number 1. And most people have Jedrick Wills ranked number 1. I have them picking Tristan Wirfs, the tackle from Iowa. This guy had a great combine. He tested great in terms of height, and he has really good film. The only thing I worry about with him is can he stay consistent, because on film a lot last season he had a lot of inconsistencies, but he's 6'4", he's really tough, he's really strong, and I have him ranked as the number 1 tackle in the draft, and I think that they'll go Tristan Wirfs here, the Cardinals will. and really solidify that offensive side of the ball. And after that, it's really complete, their offense. Now they just have to focus on defense. But yeah, Cardinals at pick 8 go Tristan Wirfs. The Jaguars at pick 9 is another one that was kind of hard in doing a mock draft because, again, they're a team that kind of needs everything. I think they'll go Javon Kinlaw, the defensive tackle out of South Carolina, because a lot of defensive players were really good there whenever they were good. Their identity in 2017 and other seasons where they were really good, their Super Bowl season, it was always their defense, and they have to get back to that identity. I know that the coaches and everybody's all different now than it was back then, but their defense, they already have Miles Jack. This is a really good piece to add in there. He's a really good defensive tackle, not quite as good as Derek Brown from Auburn is, but another SEC defensive tackle that never hurts. SEC players are always ready for the NFL, and I think that they'll go defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw, but I wouldn't be surprised if they took a tackle here. And then moving on to number 10, the Cleveland Browns. The only thing that they're missing from their offense on paper, it looks like, is an offensive tackle. And I've seen a lot of mocks where they go Jedrick Wills. The only thing I worry about with Wills is that he has a lot more experience at right tackle than left tackle. So I don't think that they'll go Jedrick Wills. I think that they'll go Mekhi Becton, who is my second-ranked tackle in the draft. He's the monster of the draft, like 370, 6'7". He's incredible. He's huge. He's a monster. He just throws people down. His technique is kind of off a lot of the times. Like, he gets caught and his feet can't move that well. But I think that that's something you can coach up. Bill Callahan, that new offensive line coach in Cleveland, will help him. And I think they'll go Mekhi Becton. And then, again, like the Cardinals, that really sets the Browns offense in place for a really good season in 2020. The Jets at pick 11 need a lot of things. They do need a tackle, but I think they're going to go wide receiver CeeDee Lamb. The Jets were a team last year who was very disappointing. As you know, with Le'Veon Bell and Robbie Anderson, they were supposed to be a pretty good offense. Sam Darnold struggled all season with mononucleosis. Did I say that right? Anyway, he struggled a lot last season with injuries and staying healthy and stuff. So he never really got back to his form like he was a couple seasons ago. But I think giving them CeeDee Lamb would really make that offense a lot more exciting to watch. Because if you have Lamb on the outside and Bell in the backfield, that's suddenly a pretty scary defense in New York. And it will bring some excitement. It will put fans in the seats. And I think that's really what the Jets want right now. Is there another team that's in rebuild mode? The Raiders at pick 12. Now the Las Vegas Raiders. That's crazy to say. A lot of people have Jerry Jeudy going there, the wide receiver from Alabama. That's where I'm going to go. I think they could pick a quarterback here. This is a possible landing spot for Jordan Love, like I said earlier, but there's a lot of questions like with him about interceptions and other stuff, but he could be the next coming of Patrick Mahomes. But anyway, I have them going Jerry Jeudy. They need a receiver. Last season, like, their offense was all over the place. Terrell Williams never worked out for them after they signed him from the Chargers last offseason. Hunter Renfrow had a pretty good rookie season in the slot, but they need that outside receiver because whoever wins that quarterback battle there between Marcus Mariota and Derek Carr is going to need a receiver to throw to. Jerry Jeudy instantly steps into that role. He's, as many people have said, one of the best route runners they've ever seen at the collegiate level, and that is one of the things that transfer to the NFL as a wide receiver, and I think this instantly makes that Las Vegas Raiders offense very explosive. So Jerry Jeudy at pick 12 to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, 13 was originally the Indianapolis Colts, but they traded that with San Francisco for DeForest Buckner. So now the 49ers own pick 13. And I'm going to go with the experts here on this one and give them Henry Ruggs, the other wide receiver, Jerry Jeudy's buddy from Alabama. He tested off the charts at the combine. Obviously, everyone expected him to break all the speed records for the 40. He ended up running a 4.27, which is pretty dang fast, even though it wasn't the record. He's one of those rare breeds at wide receiver who can run and catch equivalently. Like, he can catch the ball just as well as he can run. He's explosive after the catch. That's where most of his damage is done, is after the catch. He can spin, he can run, obviously. And I think just putting him into that role with the 49ers as their number one or number two wide receiver behind Deebo Samuel to replace Emmanuel Sanders, because obviously he went to the Saints this offseason, would be instantly an upgrade for them. The San Francisco offense is just going to take off if they get Henry Ruggs, and look out everyone in the NFC West division. Pick 14 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this is going to be an awesome team to watch. Obviously, getting Tom Brady. It's still going to be weird to see Brady in a Bucs jersey, but we'll go with it. So I have them going offensive tackle Jedrick Wills here. Again, like I said earlier, he has a lot more experience at right tackle than left tackle. So I expect him to play right tackle at the NFL level like he did at the collegiate level last season. They really need an offensive line help to protect Tom Brady and to protect those running backs because they have a really good offense on paper. I mean, obviously Mike Evans and Chris Godwin as their wide receivers. Cameron Brate had a pretty nice season last year. They were just missing that offensive line, and that's part of the reason why Jameis Winston threw so many interceptions last year is he was under constant pressure. So getting a tackle here and getting Jedrick Wills would totally help that and totally give Tom Brady protection and time to throw to these elite receivers. Now, pick 15 belongs to the Broncos. They need a receiver, and I think they're going to go wide receiver Justin Jefferson, arguably one of the most NFL ready wide receivers in this draft class. I mean, this dude was off the charts last season at LSU. A big reason for Joe Burrow's success last year. He had an awesome playoff run with LSU, catching all these crazy passes in the Clemson National Championship game. This guy's incredible. I think picking him at 15 is a bit of a reach though, because I see him in a lot of mocks lower in like the 20s or maybe even the second round. But the Broncos really need a receiver opposite Courtland Sutton, obviously because last season they had Emmanuel Sanders and traded him to San Francisco. So I think getting Justin Jefferson instantly gives them a good 1-2 punch at wide receiver and Courtland Sutton and Justin Jefferson for Drew Lock to throw to because it looks like they're rolling with Drew Lock this upcoming season. Now, pick 16 is the Falcons. They lost a lot of assets in free agency, but their offense looks absolutely incredible. So expect them to go defense. Now, it's kind of up in the air which defensive position they need to address first, but I think losing Desmond Trufant is what ultimately sells them on a corner here. I have them going cornerback C.J. Henderson from Florida. He's a really great corner, and if not for Jeff Okudah, he'd be by far the best corner in this draft. But I think that instantly gives them a number one corner. He gives them a playmaker on the defensive side of the ball, a ball hawk. Henderson's quite good and played really well in the SEC, which is always impressive, like I mentioned earlier. Let's move on to pick 17, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, losing Byron Jones was the low point of their offseason, and they have to address that, the number one cornerback position. I saw a lot of mocks earlier before the free agency really kicked off, having them linked to safety Xavier McKinney from Alabama. But now that they got Clinton Dix on that one-year deal, I don't think that safety is their priority right now. I think they have to go corner. And my third-ranked corner in the draft is Christian Fulton from LSU. He's quite good. He instantly, not necessarily replaces Byron Jones, but he can step into that role and do a decent job. Getting rid of Byron Jones for them gave them a lot of cap space that they needed to sign Amari Cooper, and they're going to need to sign Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott in a few years. So it had to be done. It was unfortunate for the Cowboys, but Christian Fulton will give them a great piece in the secondary. Let's move on to the Dolphins' second first-round pick at pick 18, and I have them going Clavon Chase on the edge from LSU. I think getting him this low would be a really good steal for them. Like I said earlier, they rebuilt their defense, obviously getting Byron Jones, who I just talked about from the Cowboys. They need an edge still, and Clavon Chason would instantly give them a number one option. I mean, this guy was absolutely incredible last season, especially in the playoff run for LSU. And he instantly gives the Dolphins a playmaker on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, he's probably second in edges to Chase Young, a great player, really strong, really fast, and he's going to have to sack these AFC East quarterbacks because it's going to be a crazy division this season. Let's move on to pick 19. It's the Las Vegas Raiders. Still crazy to say, even after I said it. This is their second first-round choice here. And they're going to go Trevon Diggs, the corner from Alabama. They still need help on the defensive side of the ball. Another great corner, probably fourth behind Fulton, Jeff Okudah, and C.J. Henderson, but instantly a playmaker for them. Picking Bama players never really turns out bad. It seems like going to the pros. I mean, these players are always incredible. So I think they'll go Trevon Diggs here, a great player for them in the secondary, and someone that they can rely upon. Now, the Jaguars at pick 20, their second first-round pick as well. Like I said earlier, that their identity is defense, and they have to focus on defense in the first round here. I think they go defense again, and this time it's Patrick Queen, the linebacker from LSU. I think getting him at pick 20, if they can, is an absolute steal because he's one of the best. He's probably the best linebacker in the draft, but I really had nowhere else to put him besides here. The Jaguars have a need at linebacker. They have a need pretty much everywhere on defense. Corner is another one that they that they need, but I think picking at 9 would be a bit of a reach for CJ Henderson or some of the other players. And here there's not really a cornerback, in my opinion, that fits their identity on defense. So I think they'll just go linebacker Patrick Queen here. It gives them a great 1-2 punch with Miles Jack at linebacker too. So I think that would be a great pick for them. That would be a value pick and probably best player available there for the Jags at pick 20. Now moving on to the Eagles, the team that refuses to ever pick a wide receiver here, I think finally caves in and picks T. Higgins, probably the third best wide receiver in my opinion, ready for the NFL behind Jefferson and Judy. The dude is incredible. I mean, he's kind of undersized, but he had a great season last year at Clemson. His draft stock kind of fell off because of his size and because of his combine and things like that, but this would be a great pick for the Eagles. They have to go wide receiver of some sort in the first round. I'm not sure if it'll be Higgins or Jefferson or somebody else, but I think T. Higgins would be a great value pick here for the Eagles. The Vikings, we're seeing a run on receivers here, ladies and gentlemen. They're picking Jalen Reagor here, wide receiver out of TCU. They traded away Stephon Diggs in the offseason to Buffalo, and they got their first-round pick. So here's Jalen Reagor, wide receiver from TCU, a very explosive player. The only thing I worry about in picking in the Big 12 is that the defenses aren't great, so you can't really evaluate their offense because if they had gone against SEC defenses, then that's like instantly transfers to the NFL. But with Big 12, I kind of shaky on that. If Jalen Reagor put up the same numbers in the SEC, he'd probably be the number one wide receiver available. But here, I think it's a great pick for the Vikings. They have to go wide receiver in the first round or in the second round at the very least. Losing Stephon Diggs, now they only have Thielen in their wide receiver room right now. Yes, I meant to say that 3 times. They have to address it, and they lost a lot of pieces in free agency. They lost their OC, now as the Browns head coach. They're going to go Jalen Reagor here, and I think it's a great pick for them. Now moving on to the New England Patriots. Obviously, they have a hole at cornerback, so this could be a spot where they can go Jordan Love. However, I think that they're going to just settle with their quarterbacks right now, and they're going to go edge AJ Epinesa from Iowa, an incredible player. Last season, watching the Big Ten, it was incredible how much he lived in the backfield. I would be scared if I go against the Patriots and I see AJ Epinesa lining up on that defense because he's incredible. And the Patriots, this is kind of a spot where no one really knows what they're going to do because if Jordan Love falls there, then maybe you take him and let him develop. With Belichick there, that probably would turn out very well for them. But I think AJ Epinesa instantly gives them a great playmaker on defense, and I think that's what they'll do. Now, the Saints, obviously getting Emmanuel Sanders pretty much sets their offense in place for this year. Their offensive line is still really good, so they just need to focus on defense here. I have them going linebacker Kenneth Murray from Oklahoma. Now, some might say this is a reach at 24 because in some mocks he was falling to the second round, but I think this would be a great pick here for the Saints. They do need a linebacker anyway, so if he's the only one on the board, that's a great pick. That's probably a value pick more than anything there, and it addresses the need for them, so it's a win-win. Going on to pick 25, the Vikings again. They're going Xavier McKinney here. Again, a player that I said that the Cowboys had been linked to, but now since Minnesota lost so many key assets on the defensive side of the ball, such as safety Andrew Sendejo, corner Xavier Rhodes, they have to go DB here. I think the best one on the board is Xavier McKinney, and he instantly fills a need for them. They'll have to go corner later in the draft. I just thought picking here would be kind of a reach for any of the other corners available. So I think Xavier McKinney here is a great pick for the Vikings, and I think that's ultimately what they'll do. Now moving on to pick 26, it's the Dolphins again, their third first-round selection in this draft. This is the one that came from Houston for Laramie Tunsil earlier in the season. They're going to go tackle Andrew Thomas here from Georgia. This is an absolute steal for them as I had nowhere really else to pin Andrew Thomas earlier in the draft. I think he will ultimately go top 15, but in this mock, he just kind of fell. Like other teams had needs in other spots. So I think getting here is a real value pick for them. They could go guard later in the draft to really solidify that offensive line, but picking Andrew Thomas here is a great pick. I love Andrew Thomas. He probably has the best film out of all the tackles in my opinion. He's a very good run blocker. The only thing I worry about with him is his pass blocking. He gets his hands in the wrong place sometimes, and his feet get kind of messed up, kind of like Mekhi Becton is earlier that I talked about. But I think picking him at 26 is a great pick, an absolute steal for them. And in this mock, that's what they'll do. Now, pick 27, is the Seahawks, and I have them picking a very interesting prospect by the name of Yetur Gross-Matos, an awesome name to say, the edge from Penn State. This is an explosive player, put up great stats last year, lived in the backfield kind of like Chase Young and Clavon Chase and AJ Epinesa. He's probably the fourth best defensive end around. But this instantly fills a need for the Seahawks. There's kind of questions about whether or not they're going to re-sign Jadeveon Clowney. So they have a lot of question marks on defense. On offense, they're pretty much set, but they just need to address some defensive needs, and then that team will be right back in the playoffs this year like they were last year. So Yetur Gross-Matos is the pick at 27 for the Seattle Seahawks. Now moving on to the Baltimore Ravens at pick 28. I have them going linebacker Zach Bond from Wisconsin. I think he's one of the best linebackers available. He was making all types of plays last season for the Badgers, and he's an incredible player. This is kind of one where I could see them going defensive tackle because they lost some key pieces all around their defense, and that's probably the one spot where they really need, but this would be a value pick for them. It might be a reach picking Zach Bond here, but I think they do need a linebacker, and he's the best one available. If Kenneth Murray here falls here, the one that went to the Saints earlier in this mock from Oklahoma, I totally expect them to jump on him, maybe even trade up for him. But picking Zach Bond here, I think would be a great pick for them and instantly fills a need. The Titans now pick Neville Gallimore, the defensive tackle from Oklahoma. Obviously, losing Jarrell Casey was a big loss for them along the defensive line, so they definitely need defensive end help. This has been another spot where Yetur Gross-Matos has been mocked, but I think he'll go to Seattle as long as they don't re-sign Jadeveon Clowney. Neville Gallimore lived in the backfield last year, gets really good leverage like some of these other defensive tackles like Javon Kinlaw and Derek Brown, like I talked about earlier. But again, being in the Big 12, his stock isn't as good as a defensive player, obviously. I don't love defensive players from the Big 12, but we'll see another one in a minute here come out from TCU. But Neville Gallimore instantly feels a need for the Titans. Again, that awesome playoff run that they had last year. They really just need help along the defensive line, and then they'll be set and probably right back in the playoffs again this year. Now, pick 30 is the Packers, and they have to get a receiver. Oh, boy, do they need a receiver. Now, I know I've had a lot of receivers go in this first mock draft here, but I think that this is a pick where the Packers are pretty much locked into a wide receiver, whoever kind of falls to them. And in this mock draft, they're picking wide receiver Laviska Shenault from Colorado, the speedster. Not nearly as fast as Henry Ruggs, but still gives them an explosive playmaker. Last season, the only issue with the Packers was their wide receiving core behind Devontae Adams. Geronimo Allison couldn't really step into that role. They didn't really have a reliable number 2 wide receiver. So I think Shenault instantly gives that to them and gives them an explosive playmaker opposite Devontae Adams, which they terribly need. Now, pick 31, like I said earlier, the other defensive tackle, it's the 49ers picking Ross Blacklock. Now, obviously, losing DeForest Buckner this offseason to the Colts was a heavy loss for them, but they do have a lot of depth along the defensive line. The only thing is that Solomon Thomas hasn't really performed as they hoped he would. But I think getting Ross Blacklock basically replaces DeForest Buckner as best as anyone can to replace DeForest Buckner because he's incredible. But he instantly fills a need for them that basically makes their defense as scary as it was last season and puts them in position to win the division again. Now, pick 32, the last and final pick of the first round. It's the Chiefs, and I have seen them mocked to wide receiver or running back DeAndre Swift from Georgia, but I don't think that pick really makes sense. I think that's kind of a reach for him. I don't love running backs in the first round. I agree with Mel Kiper on that one. You just don't really need a running back that much. But I think the Chiefs are going to go cornerback AJ Terrell here from Clemson. The corners are another position that's really, really good in this draft. The corners, wide receivers, edges, there's a lot of positions that are really strong in this draft, and corners one of them. And AJ Terrell's the best one on the board. Now, I know that their defense performed really good late in last season and ultimately won them a Super Bowl in some people's minds because they figured out a way to shut down that explosive 49ers offense, but this instantly fills a need for them in the secondary. They have to go corner at some point, so I think they do it now. AJ Terrell's a great player for them, instantly fills a need, and will help contribute to the next Super Bowl run for the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's the end of this mock draft. I really hope that the draft ends up happening because we need some sports in our lives, if y'all agree with me on this one. This coronavirus has kind of wiped out the globe in terms of what's open and what's happening, and everything's pretty much closed. The draft is the only thing that's proceeding as normal. Well, as normal as in terms of date wise, but it's gonna look weird. But it's draft, it's football. Like, what more can you ask for at this point? I'm just happy to not watch old games at this point. So that's my mock draft. I hope y'all enjoyed. Hopefully next time we can get Reagan on the podcast with me, but due to the coronavirus, I'm only able to run solo. So thank you for listening, and we'll see y'all next time on the RW and JB and ATX Sports Podcast.